Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Views of an Outsider, The Outsider's View from May 4th. Before we get started, I'd just remind everybody that I'm in the middle of a move, and with my health problems, that is a major undertaking. So if I'm a bit lifeless, or if there's some extra household noises, I hope you'll bear with me. I'm trying to stay on track here, but it really is pushing the limits of everything I've got to keep the podcast going right now. So I hope you can extend me a little bit of understanding. And with that, we will get started with this week. So the Trump administration made an announcement regarding its plans to celebrate America's 250th birthday. They've decided to use this occasion to provide a great opportunity for American artists to showcase their talents to the world. The National Endowment for the Humanities announced last Thursday that it would be handing out grants to artists, which will allow them to sculpt one of the 250 American historical legends that have been chosen by the Trump administration to be placed in our new National Garden of American Heroes. The artists who are chosen must be American citizens to participate, and they can receive up to 3 grants of $200,000 apiece, which would total a maximum payout of $600,000 in exchange for making 3 statues that will then forever memorialize their skill. The statues will all be life-size and made of marble, granite, bronze, copper, or brass. The National Endowment for the Humanities will be partnering with the National Endowment for the Arts in order to supply the $34 million that the project will require. The notice of funding read, quote, "The National Garden will feature Americans who deserve honor, recognition, and lasting tribute because of the battles they won, the ideas they championed, the diseases they cured, and the lives they saved, the heights they achieved, and the hopes they passed down. It will also be a place where Americans can gather to learn about and celebrate America and the icons who made America what it is today. The list of figures to be honored include our second president, John Adams, the Civil War nurse, Clara Barton, the iconic inventors Orville and Wilbur Wright, the legendary World War II General Douglas MacArthur, the historic astronaut Neil Armstrong, a Civil War soldier, Joshua Chamberlain, the leader of the Pilgrims, William Bradford, the country music icon, Johnny Cash, the famous anti-slavery activist, Frederick Douglass, our firebrand of a founding father, Patrick Henry, a World War I hero, Alvin York, and many other worthy role models. A specific location for the garden has not yet been chosen. Trump first proposed this plan back in 2020, but it was canceled by Joe Biden. Now we're doing it anyway because we are proud of our history, not ashamed of it. And if you are part of the small minority of people who feel differently, I guess you'll just deal with it because the rest of us have feelings that count too. When it comes to the escalating situation in Ukraine, Saturday morning began with President Trump suggesting that Putin needs to be dealt with differently as the administration moves forward, acknowledging that too many people are dying. Earlier this month, 50 senators, half of them Democrats and half Republicans, introduced a bill that would impose additional sanctions on Russia. Trump posted to Truth Social that there was no reason for Putin to be shooting missiles into civilian areas, cities, and towns over the last few days. It makes me think that maybe he doesn't want to stop the war. He's just been tapping me along. Trump's post also said that the idea of Ukraine getting back Crimea at this point was ridiculous, while also slamming Barack Obama for allowing Russia to take it in the first place. President Vladimir Zelensky of Ukraine has said that he will not recognize Russia's control of Crimea. In a Time magazine article that was published on Friday, Trump had said that he would facilitate a deal between Russia and Ukraine, but he did note that Putin would have liked to, quote, take the whole thing, referring to Ukraine. Then, after attending the funeral of Pope Francis and having a one-on-one meeting with President Zelensky, President Trump told reporters on Sunday where things now stood between them. His meeting with Zelensky was much less dramatic than the previous highly publicized blowout in the Oval Office had been, and Trump remarked, We had a good meeting. It was a nice meeting. He wants to do something good for his country. He thinks he's doing a good job. He's working hard. We'll see what happens. Trump went on to say that Zelensky had told him that he needs more weapons, but he's been saying that for 3 years. He needs more weapons, and we're going to see what happens with respect to Russia, because Russia, I've been surprised and disappointed that they did the bombing of those places after discussions. A reporter asked him, "What do you want Vladimir Putin to do?" And Trump answered, "Well, I want him to stop shooting, sit down, and sign a deal. We have the confines of a deal, I believe, and I want him to sign it and be done with it and just go back to life," which is a desire that I think all of us share, except Putin himself, which is the problem. Even with more news than ever to report on, mainstream media continues to die, because in only a few short years, they have irrevocably destroyed the trust that took decades to build. If you would like proof of that unfortunate reality, on Wednesday, CNN's primetime ratings dropped below 500,000 viewers, and less than 100,000 of them were in the 25 to 54-year-old demographic, otherwise known as the present and future, leaving them exclusively with the demographic of the past. According to Adweek, The Source, with Caitlin Collins, pulled in a total of 464,000 viewers, while Newsnight with Abby Phillips in the 10 p.m. slot followed her with just 459,000 viewers. And Laura Coates Live finished off the final primetime hour with only 269,000 viewers. In fact, Anderson Cooper 360 was the only primetime CNN show with more than 500,000 viewers. Barely. He pulled in 535,000 interested eyes, and all of the primetime shows failed to draw more than 100,000 viewers in the vital 25 to 54 demographic. Cooper again had the best showing with 93,000 young people, then Phillip with 90,000, Collins had 76,000, and Coates ended the night with just 46,000 young viewers. Early Sunday morning, the DEA's Rocky Mountain Division led a raid assisted by multiple agencies, including Homeland Security and the Justice Department. They swarmed an underground nightclub in Colorado Springs that was being used as a base for trendy Aragua gang members, and they came out with over 100 illegal migrants in custody. They also recovered weapons and drugs. The Attorney General, Pam Bondi, posted, "This morning, DEA HQ apprehended over 100 illegal aliens at an underground nightclub frequented by trendy Aragua and MS-13 terrorists. Cocaine, meth, and pink cocaine was seized. 2 people were also arrested on existing warrants. As we approach his 100 days in office, Trump's directive to make America safe again is achieving results." DHS posted, "The party is over. Law and order has returned. Under the leadership of President of the United States Trump and Secretary Noem, we are taking a whole-of-government approach to removing criminal illegal aliens from American communities." Fox News correspondent Bill Milligan also chimed in, saying, "Spotted in this video helping make arrests of illegal aliens at this Colorado underground nightclub, U.S. Postal Service Police, IRS Criminal Investigations, along with ICE, DEA, and FBI. Trump admin taking a whole-of-federal government approach to bring in every agency for deportations." The news of this raid in Colorado Springs came right on the heels of a 4-day multi-agency operation in Florida that was dubbed Operation Tidal Wave, which caught around 800 illegal aliens. And speaking of problems that have been affecting Americans from beyond our borders, foreign donations to American universities apparently surged during the Biden administration. Qatar was the largest source of such funding over the past 40 years, along with China, the second largest donor. Both of them significantly ramped up their donations during the Biden administration. According to a news report from the Network Contagion Research Institute that was shared exclusively with the Free Press, the total foreign funding of American universities during the Biden administration was $29 million, which, to provide some context, is equal to the total amount that was received from all foreign countries over the last 40 years combined. NCRI's co-founder, Joel Finkelstein, told the Free Press, "The floodgates opened during the Biden era. This isn't just a financial issue, it's a national security crisis. Hostile powers are buying influence on American campuses at an industrial scale." And I think we've all seen the results of allowing that malevolent influence on our young people based on the rise of anti-Semitism on campus and other problems that have made it clear how indoctrinated our young people have become. Last week, President Trump signed an executive order that required institutions of higher education to report significant sources of foreign funding. From 2010 to 2016, according to one study, universities failed to disclose more than half of reportable foreign gifts. Even when foreign funding is reported, its true sources are often hidden. The order said that the Secretary and the Attorney General shall hold accountable higher education institutions that failed to comply with the law concerning disclosure of foreign funding. The Free Press report added that a 2024 study published by the National Association of Scholars found that universities failed to disclose at least $1 billion in foreign funding since Biden took office, the majority of which came from authoritarian countries such as Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey. While Qatar technically holds the designation of a major non-NATO ally of the United States, that country is also known for harboring the leaders of Hamas and exporting political Islamism, including supporting the Muslim Brotherhood across the Middle East. The Free Press had previously reported that 200 or more American colleges and universities had illegally withheld information regarding an estimated $13 billion in undisclosed contributions from foreign countries. They revealed an official on Trump's anti-Semitism task force told the Free Press that they are actively investigating alleged connections between foreign malign actors and student groups on campus. The Free Press concluded, "It is notable that the universities exploding with anti-Israel protests have the strongest relationships with governments whose national interests are at direct odds with the United States." One prime example of this would be Qatar, which is the single largest source of foreign donations to U.S. universities since the recording of such things began back in 1986. $6.3 billion has gone from Qatar to American universities. A third of that was during the Biden administration alone. Qatar is nothing more than a cutout for Iran, and they are an open backer of several terrorist organizations like Hamas. Their motives are clearly not good. What legitimate reason would they have for investing in American universities in this way instead of investing in their own country? Do you believe that they just happen to have an extra several $billion lying around that their people don't need in any way, so they decided to spend it on a bunch of universities on the other side of the planet? They are clearly buying influence so that they can indoctrinate the next generation of Americans, and we are not obligated to let any enemy power do that. We need someone at the top who has the balls to put a stop to this, assuming that the university system even survives long enough to remain an ongoing problem, which is quickly becoming doubtful, unfortunately. For the record, the universities who receive the biggest foreign donations just so happen to be the same universities where we've seen the most problems. The largest recipients were Harvard, Cornell, Carnegie, Mellon, UPenn, MIT, Stanford, Johns Hopkins, and Yale. All of the trouble spots. Coincidence? Obviously not. What do we do? I think we all know. On Tuesday, the Canadian Liberal Party, led by the new Prime Minister Mark Carney, won the Canadian election after the Conservative Party, led by Pierre Poilievre, fell from the 25-point lead that it had among voters back in December. As of Tuesday morning, the Liberal Party had won 154 seats with 43.5% of the vote. Despite not winning the election, Poilievre's Conservative Party achieved their best result in years, garnering 41.4% of the vote and adding 20 seats. However, Poilievre lost his seat in Parliament, which could jeopardize his role as a leader of the Conservative Party. Poilievre's lead in the polls shrank when President Donald Trump imposed tariffs on Canada and made sarcastic remarks calling Canada the 51st state. On February 1st, a few days after he was sworn in, Trump announced 25% tariffs on virtually all imports coming from Canada. On February 3rd, he announced a 30-day pause on those tariffs. On February 27th, he said the tariffs against Canada would go into effect on March 4th as scheduled. On March 5th, he said he would pause tariffs on cars coming into the U.S. for 1 month. On April 9th, he said he would pause all reciprocal tariffs for 90 days and make them 10% across the board. In mid-March, Trump told Fox News, "I'd rather deal with a liberal than a conservative. The conservative that's running is stupidly no friend of mine. I don't know him, but he said negative things. When he said negative things, I couldn't care less. I think it's easier to deal actually with a liberal." Poilievre responded, "Last night, President Donald Trump endorsed Mark Carney. Why? Because, as Trump said, he's easier to deal with and knows that I will be a tough negotiator and always put Canada first. Carney is weak and would cave to Trump's demands, just like he did when he moved his company headquarters from Canada to New York City. Canadians don't want a weak and conflicted leader. They want a strong prime minister who will put Canada first." On the day of the election, Trump again wrote on Truth Social about Canada becoming a state. As Canadian voters went to the polls on Monday, Poilievre, a hard-line conservative, wrote on X, "President Trump, stay out of our election. The only people who will decide the future of Canada are Canadians at the ballot box. Canada will always be proud, sovereign, and independent, and we will never be the 51st state. Today, Canadians can vote for change so we can strengthen our country, stand on our own 2 feet, and stand up to America from a position of strength." So, I have 3 comments to make. 1, Trump is clearly to blame for what happened, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise in the name of loyalty like some people on the right are doing. I choose honesty above loyalty every time. Canada and American could have had a brilliant future of prosperity side by side under Poilievre, a future which is now gone because of a childish need to continue telling a joke long after it stopped being funny, and because of an erratic tariff war that was unnecessary when it came to Canada. I hired a president, not a comedian. I don't mind you being both as long as one doesn't interfere with the other. And when it does, I expect you to have your priorities straight. 2, the future of Canada is for Canadians to decide, and it is therefore none of my business who they elect to be their prime minister. But 3, it seems to me like you have let Trump goad you into harming yourself above everyone else by electing Trudeau 2.0 when you had finally gotten rid of the man who had ruined your lives for 10 years, and now you've signed up for several more years of the same thing when you had just gotten what you wanted, according to all the polls, by getting rid of him. I think it was foolish of you to surrender your own independent interests to an outsider like Trump, and I hope that you eventually find enough pride in yourselves and enough concern in your own future to ignore these kind of provocations and do what is best for you. That's my thoughts on the matter. In other international news, on Wednesday, the U.S. Treasury confirmed that Ukraine and the United States had signed the rare earth minerals deal that has been talked about for so long. It established the United States-Ukraine Reconstruction Investment Fund. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said on social media, "Today's agreement signals clearly to Russian leadership that the Trump administration is committed to a peace process centered on a free, sovereign, and prosperous Ukraine over the long term." The Treasury Secretary added that the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation will establish the investment fund with the Ukraine government. I hope that this will actually provide some security for the people of Ukraine, who we committed to providing security for in exchange for them giving up their nuclear weapons during the Cold War, and I believe in standing by the commitments that you make. Now the United States is going to have to get tough with Russia, since making nice has clearly not worked, and to be honest, I don't really know how we're going to accomplish that. In more international news, a freelance journalist who reports frequently on the BBC's Arabic channel about Israel and Gaza issued some monstrously murderous anti-Semitic posts on social media, including, quote, "We shall burn you as Hitler did, but this time we won't have a single one of you left." The Telegraph reported Samir El-Zian has appeared on BBC's Arabic more than a dozen times since the conflict erupted following October 7th and Hamas's attack on southern Israel that day. The Palestinian journalist has also repeatedly described the Hamas terrorists who carried out the October 7th attacks as resistance fighters, including those who targeted young music fans at the Nova Festival. After the February 2023 attack in which a Palestinian terrorist murdered two little boys, ages 8 and 6, along with a 20-year-old man, El-Zanin commented that the victims will soon go to hell. In July 2022, El-Zanin posted on Facebook, "When things go awry for us, shoot the Jews. It fixes everything." May 2011 was when he posted, "My message to the Zionist Jews, we are going to take our land back. We love death for Allah's sake, the same way you love life. We shall burn you as Hitler did, but this time we won't have a single one of you left." He has also used the hashtag that reads, hashtag, "We are all Hamas, you son of a Jewess," while calling the terrorists who killed Jews in their bigotry heroes and martyrs. The Telegraph added that Ahmed Qanan, another regular BBC Arabic freelance contributor, said after Palestinians had murdered several Israelis on Holocaust Memorial Day in January of 2023 that those who were wounded in the attack would also die. He responded to a friend who railed, "We want to see some throats cut," by saying, "Don't give up on your ambition." The Committee for Accuracy in the Middle East Reporting and Analysis discovered these horrific social media posts. A CAMERA UK spokesman said the BBC misleadingly frames freelance journalists used by the Arabic service as mere contributors so that it won't have to take responsibility for the hatred they regularly spew on social media. In March, the Conservative Party leader in Britain, Kemi Badenoch, urged wholesale reform of BBC Arabic, writing to Tim Davie, the BBC's Director General, BBC Arabic is intended to provide high-quality, trusted news for hundreds of millions of people who speak Arabic. It should uphold the highest standards of public service broadcasting. Instead, it seems that the World Service may be fomenting extremism and misleading audiences, you think, while funded by the taxpayer and license fees. This is simply unacceptable and must stop. But the BBC made no attempts to moderate or to lessen its bias. In mid-March, Orly Goldschmidt, the spokesperson for the Israeli embassy, published a message that he received from the BBC requesting an Israeli guest who was anti-Netanyahu. It read, "Hi, name redacted, this is, name redacted, from NewsHour of the World Service. Our presenter, name redacted, would like to interview an Israeli military voice, can be former, about the latest ground offensive in Gaza. We want someone who is going to be critical of Netanyahu and the ground offense. Concern about remaining hostages, stretching the IDF capacity, destruction of Gaza, or any other reason. Do you think you could help us with this? Thank you." The message ended with a praying hands emoji. Do you remember the good old days when the BBC had standards that caused it to be thought of as legit? Clearly, those days are long gone. On Thursday, the Department of Health and Human Services released a comprehensive review of medical interventions that were being used for minors experiencing gender confusion. The review identified a number of risks associated with the interventions, including infertility, sexual dysfunction, and cardiovascular disease. According to the Daily Wire, HHS concluded that despite increasing pressure to promote these drastic medical interventions for our nation's youth, the review makes clear the science and evidence do not support their use, and the risks cannot be ignored. The gender-affirming model of care includes irreversible endocrine and surgical interventions on minors with no physical pathology. These interventions carry risks of significant harms, including infertility, sterility, sexual dysfunction, impaired bone density accrual, adverse cognitive impacts, cardiovascular disease, and metabolic disorders, psychiatric disorders, surgical complications, and regret. It also determined that there is no independent association between gender dysphoria and suicidality, and no evidence that pediatric medical transition reduces the incidence of suicide, which remains, fortunately, very low. They went on to say that U.S. medical associations played a key role in creating a perception that there is professional consensus in support of pediatric medical transition. This apparent consensus, however, is driven primarily by a small number of specialized committees influenced by WPATH. It is not clear that the official views of these associations are shared by the wider medical community or even by most of their members. There is evidence that some medical and mental health associations have suppressed dissent and stifled debate about this issue among their members. The evidence for benefits from pediatric medical intervention is very uncertain, the review stated, while the evidence for harm is less uncertain. Thus, the review suggested medical professionals should not offer them even if they are requested, saying, quote, "When medical interventions pose unnecessary, disproportionate risks of harm, healthcare providers should refuse to offer them even when they are preferred, requested, or demanded by patients. Failure to do so increases the risk of iatrogenic harm and reduces medicine to consumerism, threatening the integrity of the profession and undermining the trust in medical authority. The voices of whistleblowers and detransitioners have played a critical role in drawing the public's attention to the risks and harms associated with pediatric medical transition. Their concerns have been discounted, dismissed, or ignored by prominent advocates and practitioners of pediatric medical transition. There is a dearth of research on psychotherapeutic approaches to managing gender dysphoria in children and adolescents. This is due in part to the miscategorization of such approaches as conversion therapy. A more robust evidence base supports psychotherapeutic approaches to managing common comorbid mental health conditions. Psychotherapy is a non-invasive alternative to endocrine and surgical interventions for the treatment of pediatric gender dysphoria. Systematic reviews of evidence have found no evidence of adverse effects of psychotherapy in this context. There were other reports that provided some illuminating insights this week. Texas hospitals are apparently on the hook for $121.8 million worth of medical bills incurred by illegal aliens just for November of 2024 alone. During that month, illegal aliens made 31,000 visits to hospitals just in that one state during just that 1 month, according to the Texas Health and Human Services Commission. These findings came out after Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed an order directing THHSC to collect and provide quarterly data on the cost of illegal aliens to the state's hospitals and the number of visits from illegal aliens. The first full year of data from THHSCC will be released next January. Abbott's press secretary, Andrew Malaris, I apologize if I'm butchering your name, explained many of these illegal immigrants are straining the Texas hospital system, which is why Governor Abbott directed the Texas Health and Human Services Commission to begin assessing the cost of care. Now Texas has reliable data on the dramatic financial impact that illegal immigration is having on our hospital system. One 2023 report from Republicans on the House Homeland Security Committee found that illegal aliens have similarly burdened the hospital systems of other states with large illegal alien populations. Florida hospitals, for example, incurred $312 million bill because of illegal aliens in fiscal year 2023 and received just over $100 million in reimbursements. A single hospital in the border town of Yuma, Arizona, provided $26 million in uncompensated care to illegal aliens. That report estimated that Texas hospitals faced anywhere from $597 million to $717 million in uncompensated health care costs for illegal aliens from 2006 to 2008. One study from the Federation for American Immigration Reform estimated that illegal aliens cost the United States a total of $150 billion each year, even when factoring in tax revenue that is received from illegal immigrations. That $150 billion was what was left over in deficit. Meanwhile, the government continues to uncover and cut any additional waste that it has been finding. The Daily Wire learned this week that the Department of Transportation is terminating $54 million worth of woke university grants that it recently discovered in its budget. My question, which I've had for a while now, is why is the Department of Transportation funding education, woke or otherwise? Why does every department have its finger in every pie from immigration to the environment instead of focusing on the one thing that each of them was actually created to do? 7 schools received grants, which the Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy told the Daily Wire that these grants were advancing a radical DEI and green agenda. For example, the University of California, Davis's National Center for Sustainable Transportation was receiving $12 million for, and I quote, accelerating equitable decarbonization research, according to the Department of Transportation, while City College of New York's Center for Social and Economic Mobility for People and Communities Through Transportation was receiving about $9 million for research into, and I quote, equitable transportation for the disadvantaged workforce. Duffy told the Daily Wire on Friday afternoon that, quote, the previous administration turned the Department of Transportation into the Department of Woke. I've focused the department on what matters, which is safety, making travel great again, and building big, beautiful infrastructure projects. The American people have zero interest in millions of their tax dollars funding research on the intersection of gender nonconforming people and infrastructure inequality, or whether road improvement projects are racist. It's time to inject a dose of reality back into our higher education system, and that starts with ending these wasteful and divisive grants. End quote. And he's not exaggerating for effect. The University of Southern California's Pacific Southwest Region University Transportation Center received around $9 million to research how, quote, the transportation system creates and perpetuates inequities. The San Jose State University Manita Consortium for Emerging, Efficient, and Safe Transportation, all you people need to shorten your names, was also receiving about $6 million for research on intermodal inequities, particularly how improvements to auto travel can benefit higher income, often white drivers, while depressing transit ridership potential and depriving it of revenues necessary to provide comprehensive services to lower income, often BIPOC people, and research into using crowdsourcing and collaborating planning to address safety concerns of women and gender nonconforming people using public transportation. Translation, wah, 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 wah. The Trump administration has been vocal about ending these types of grants and the wasteful spending, tasking the Department of Government Efficiency with ending wasteful spending. Elon Musk said in a recent interview that DOGE has cut almost $200 billion from government spending since Trump took office. News also broke this week that the abortion pill is actually much more dangerous than the FDA claimed. More than 1 woman out of 10 suffers serious complications. According to news research commissioned by the Foundation for the Restoration of America, in 2023, about 11.2% of women experienced a serious adverse event after taking mifepristone abortion pill. That works out to over 17,000 women having adverse reactions just in 2023 alone. Serious adverse events can include hemorrhaging, requiring a blood transfusion, an emergency room visit, and deadly conditions like sepsis. This chance of complication is about 22 times higher than what the FDA claimed on its label for Mifepres, which is a brand name for mifepristone, in 2023. The FDA cited clinical studies saying less than 0.5% of women suffered serious adverse reactions. Doug Trox, who is the founder of Foundation for Research of America, told the Daily Wire, if you had any other drug that was kind of similar in terms of the magnitude of what this thing does, anywhere north of 2%, and they'd shut it down. They're just hell-bent on just increasing the amount of abortions. Abortion activists have argued that the abortion pill should be more readily available online without the supervision of a doctor, because some Republican-led states were looking to ban abortion. Medication abortions made up 63% of all abortions in 2023, which has doubled from 31% in 2014, according to the pro-abortion, I'm going to butcher this, I apologize, Guttmacher Institute. And I personally think whichever side of the argument you come down on, either way, women should have access to all of the information about the risks before they decide what to do with their body, shouldn't they? I mean, who could seriously be for hiding some of the information from women that is relevant to their ability to make the best choice for them and could impact their lives in very serious ways? And speaking of transparency on all matters involving healthcare, for our final story, as a big supporter of the MAHA movement, I wanted to cover an article that had been written by Amanda Prestigiacomo for the Daily Wire, covering what RFK Jr., as the Secretary of Health and Human Services, has done so far when it comes to transforming America's food standards and reorienting his agency's health initiatives. When it comes to food dyes, Kennedy announced in April that he has begun phasing out several artificial food dyes in order to eliminate them by the end of 2026. He has specifically targeted petroleum-based synthetic dyes, including red dye number 3 and 40, blue dye number 1 and 2, yellow dye number 5 and 6, and green dye number 3. These dyes are common in cereals, candy, baking goods, soft drinks, and other junk foods that are commonly consumed by children. HHS will also be partnering with the NIH to conduct some comprehensive research on how these dyes have impacted children's health and development. Kennedy has also directed the FDA to revise a rule which allows companies to self-affirm the safety of food ingredients. Under this new revision, manufacturers will now have to publicly submit safety data for new ingredients to be approved. As part of the MAHA movement, several states are trying to restrict food stamps from being spent on junk food while subsidizing healthier options. The limitations that have been proposed would apply to soda, candy, and some other highly processed foods. RFK has urged governors to submit waivers to the Department of Agriculture to effectuate such limits on the SNAP program. On April 16th, Arkansas was the first state in the nation to submit such a request. States like West Virginia, Utah, Idaho, Tennessee, South Carolina, Missouri, and Indiana are exploring SNAP restrictions as well. And despite the online controversy, this is the right move when you understand that the food stamps program was never meant to simply pay people's grocery bill for them. It was meant to prevent malnutrition among impoverished communities. Junk food is not nutritious. Therefore, buying it as a treat is obviously their right, but it is not what the tax dollars have been taken for out of somebody else's wallet. In March, the FDA unveiled a new tool which will allow people to look up chemical contaminants in their foods on a comprehensive database. Some of the contaminants included in the database are DDT, a synthetic pesticide, chlordane, an organochlorine pesticide, and aldrin and dieldrin, which are both synthetic chemicals in the insecticide family. There have also been changes when it comes to baby formula. In March, the FDA announced that it is tightening its standards on infant formula and reevaluating current products on the market. The move followed a Consumer Report investigation which found that about half of the 41 formulas that it tested contained potentially harmful levels of arsenic, lead, BPA, acrylamide, or PFAS. The FDA plans to increase testing for heavy metals and other contaminants in infant formula and is encouraging companies to work with the FDA to increase transparency and provide clearer labeling. This month, Utah became the first state in the nation to ban adding fluoride to public drinking water. Numerous other states are also considering a ban. Kennedy has routinely spoken out against the use of fluoride in drinking water, calling it industrial waste. and claiming that it is associated with numerous negative effects like arthritis, IQ loss, and thyroid disease. There have also been reports ever since March that the CDC is studying the potential links between vaccines and the rise in autism. HHS never confirmed or denied such reports, but said that no stone would go unturned when it came to researching the causes behind autism. In April, RFK confirmed that he is commissioning a series of studies to look at the suspected links between mold, pesticides, food chemicals, and medications and their potential relationship to the skyrocketing autism rates in the United States. According to USA Today, the NIH, which falls under HHS, is investing $50 million in research concerning the causes and improving the treatments for autism. RFK told Trump last month that HHS will know what is causing the autism epidemic by September. Kennedy also revealed new CDC data that found that 1 in 31 children are now diagnosed with this disorder, which is nearly 5 times higher than when the CDC started recording these surveys back in 1992. Kennedy is also determined to clean house and reinstitute higher standards in the scientific community. He announced back in March that he is restructuring HHS and terminating tens of thousands of employees, saying, "What I found when I came to HHS is really a sprawling bureaucracy. We have over 100 communication departments. We should have 1. We have 40 IT departments, dozens of HR departments, and that is where we're doing the cuts. We're going down from 82,000 personnel to 62,000. We're keeping the scientists. We're keeping the frontline providers. We're trying to do our best not only to serve as stewards of the taxpayer money, but also to make the agency more efficient. And when it comes to the priorities and the way that our research money is spent, the NIH will stop spending money on things like finding out why Americans are hesitant to take vaccines when there are so many more pressing health matters that need to be researched. NIH is terminating or scaling back more than 40 related grants and has said that such spending no longer aligns with NIH priorities. RFK is reallocating the funds that he has cut from the NIH and CDC to address the chronic diseases that are affecting so many people in this country, including me. And Kennedy is just getting started when it comes to his mission to address the alarming rates of chronic disease, especially among children. The health secretary has also signaled that he's eyeing the pharmaceutical industry next. Kennedy has voiced concern about how we over-medicate Americans, especially our young people. There have also been reports that RFK is aiming to curb or ban prescription drug ads, which is something that only the United States and New Zealand allow at this point. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please help build this podcast into a success by clicking like and follow. And I hope that you will come back again next week and bear with me through all the changes that are going on right now. Until then, have a good week, my friends.